Welcome to Intoxicated Masculinity. This is another one of our little in-between episodes where we're not doing a blind tasting, but we're just having a couple of cocktails and discussing a topic. This week's topic, we're going to be talking about our top 5, strike that, top 10 movies from the 1990s. Originally, we had said it was top 5, but none of us could actually get it down to 5, so now it's top 10. Let's start off by seeing what we're having. Brandon, what cocktail are you having tonight?
I went with something simple. I went with the rum and coke. I had originally thought of doing a White Russian for reasons will become clear later, but I thought I wouldn't be the only one. There's at least a possibility I wouldn't be the only one, and it seemed kind of so I went with something that seemed simple and kind of timeless instead.
Yeah, what are you having?
Well, I went with our 90s theme, and if there's one drink I remember from the 90s, it was this god-awful stuff right here.
That is certainly 90s.
Orange and purple. Those are the flavors. Don't let them fool you.
It tastes like orange and purple.
There's red and green. And
it tastes like being 16.
Color purple.
Brandon was very perceptive. He would not have been the only one with a White Russian. I made this White Russian in a very traditional way, just Kahlua, heavy cream, and I went with Grey Goose vodka because I am a classy motherfucker. So there's no Smirnoff.
Is Grey Goose Russian, or did you just?
Grey Goose is French, Brandon, and I'm embarrassed for you for having to ask that question.
Well, you're the one that made the drink wrong.
So this week we're going to be talking about our top 10, again, strike 5, 10 episodes or movies from the 1990s. First of all, we're going to go around and everybody's going to talk about how they picked what they picked. And then we're going to go starting at number 10 down to number 1. First of all, Kale, why did you pick, what methodology did you use to pick the movies you picked?
Okay. Well, basically I just started looking at general lists of movies from the 90s. Just marked down a bunch of them that I knew that I had seen, and then just started narrowing it down. Originally, our plan was to go with the top 5, so I actually picked off a top 5 list. But as you said, we aren't able to narrow it down quite that much, considering the surplus of movies in the data banks. So I have detailed files, but so I have another 5 after my top 5, which are not in any necessary order, and then just a handful of honorable mentions that I think people should know about.
All right, Brandon, how did you decide what to pick?
Well, originally, because I'm not a great listener, I was laboring under the misconception that it was songs. So I spent some time thinking, well, I don't want to do this songs, because people already know me, so they know what that would probably be. And I thought maybe I could do like a high fidelity thing and do like autobiographical, or ones that I remember the most. And then I was like, no, somebody mentioned it was movies. No, it's movies. So I kind of went, man, this is going to be difficult because I can think of like a handful of movies easily, but are they the ones that I remember the most? So I ended up doing like Kale and just Googling a list of 90s movies and going, oh, this one definitely. There was at least 3 that made the list that I just absolutely knew was going to be on there. And the other 7 I had to kind of refresh my memory because the 90s was a long time ago. But
speaking of refreshing,
for my methodology, I am OCD. So if we ever released a video version of this, I did lots of stuff.
You have little pieces of paper.
I have what I basically did is I went to each year, starting with 1990, going up to 1999, and looked up all the movies and just made notes of each one of the movies that I thought was notable for me. Sort of like Kale, I didn't really order these in any specific order, so we'll do them in the form of a top 10. But to be honest, catch me on any day, and they could definitely vary in order. And I want to make it clear for my list, and I can be pretty sure my colleagues here feel the same on this. This isn't the top 10 Oscar nominated movies. These I don't think a single one of my movies won Best Picture. These are the movies that meant a lot to me in the 1990s. We all watched a lot of movies in the 1990s. So if you don't like our list, then you should make a podcast and make your own list.
These are the
Because
ones that influenced my thinking, that left an impression, left me thinking about him and wanting to see him again. Multiple viewings on all of them.
all right, so let's head into it. Kale, what's your number 10?
Let's see. I'm just gonna do them in the order that I wrote it down because, like I said, the last five aren't in any particular order. But I think I kind of narrowed them down subconsciously in order. So my number 10 is going to be Truman Show. That's 1998. Jim Carrey, obviously. The thing that appealed to me about that movie was nobody had really done anything like that before. And it was just interesting to see what it would be like for someone to kind of act out physically what some people probably feel inside on a regular basis. It's like, I'm just playing an act here. I'm just a character in this story, and I'm just going to keep going on with my life.
And that was one of Carrey's first big attempts to not do just sort of straight, Ace Ventura, The Mask style physical comedy. It definitely had a serious side to it. And that's one of those years. It was weird because they had that movie with Matthew McConaughey came out. It was like the same thing. And there was a whole bunch of that happening in the 90s.
But that was a rom-com.
It was what?
That was really a rom-com.
Yeah, but it was about a guy on TV. It was weird in the 90s. It happened a bunch of times because there was like Dante's Peak and Volcano came out like right next to each other. And there was just
the asteroid movies.
Yeah, the asteroid movies. That happened a bunch of times. You have like two movies that came out, and like I know they're not the same movie, and Truman Show was definitely a lot better. But it was weird that they had like it was that thing where you have movies that are the same thing, kind of, sort of come out at the same time. All right, Brandon, what's your number 10?
My number 10, and again, my number 1 is where it's supposed to be, but the rest of them are not in any particular order. My number 10 is from 1992, Army of Darkness.
I think I might have seen that one once or twice.
Love that movie. Had it memorized near line for line. It's one of the first times I saw a horror movie be goofy. One of the first times I realized how good Bruce Campbell is and how much fun they must have had making the movie, including just coming up with memorable lines to put into the movie. I don't know. It's amazing. If you haven't seen it, you're in for a treat.
Yeah, that's a great movie, and that's one of those sort of rewatchable darlings. Like you can I mean, in the 1990s, we must have watched that movie, I don't know, 25 times.
Yeah, over and over.
And you'll oftentimes catch little things that you didn't catch maybe the first time you saw it, and it's a good one. I mean, the originals are good too. I mean, Evil Dead and Evil Dead 2 are both great too.
Evil Dead's but Evil Dead 2
I think Evil Dead's a little underrated. Evil Dead's a fun movie. Evil Dead 2 is because Evil Dead 1 they were still pretending like it was a horror movie.
Yeah.
And then Evil Dead 2 is one where they're like, oh wait a minute, people didn't enjoy this because it was a horror movie.
Army of Darkness is worth putting on, especially if it's your first time. Put on the closed captionings just so you can capture every line that he says.
Have you guys watched any of the Ash versus the Evil Dead show? I haven't caught that, but
I saw like the first episode.
I hear people like it.
Yeah,
I've seen a little bit of it, but I mean, I wouldn't write home about it.
Okay, my number 10. Again, these are in no particular order, but I'm putting them in an order, so there you go. Number 10 is Event Horizon. I got a lot of horror on my list because I like horror movies. And Event Horizon is this it's a really, really unique concept. Usually space horror has a tendency to try and ape aliens. And Event Horizon really does entirely its own thing. It's got a great cast.
Is that Sam Neill?
Yeah, it's Sam Neill and Lawrence Fishburne and there's more people. There's more people in it than that. And that's going to drive me nuts because it's got a great cast. Trust me. And it's a scary movie. It's incredibly bloody. And yeah, it's just a really, really great space horror movie.
Good thriller.
Gail, what is your number 9?
My number 9 will be Good Will Hunting, 1997.
Never heard of it.
Matt Damon, Rob Williams, Ben Affleck, those guys. Picked that one. Obviously, it's an inspirational movie. I think kind of one of those Einstein-esque characters that was kind of overlooked in the beginning and then ends up being some genius. And I mean, there's a lot of other stuff going on in the movie besides that part. I mean, dealing with relationships, being the kind of person that he is, and then obviously the background of abuse in the character. There's a lot to take in there to consider, how this guy ended up where he is mentally and socially.
And that one did win Best Picture, I think, didn't it?
I think it did.
Yeah. So I think that's the first movie, our first one where we have a Best Picture winner actually getting on the list. I think I don't believe any of mine. I don't believe any of mine won Best Picture. Yeah, no, it's a good one. It's sort of the one that got Matt Damon and Ben Affleck to be, the Matt Damon and Ben Affleck that basically ruled, the 90s and early 2000s in cinema. I mean, they were both huge. I mean, who doesn't remember Geely?
I remember the name.
Yeah,
Ghibli?
that was a bad movie. Brandon, what's your number 9?
It was 1999, The Matrix. Hated the second one and the third one, but the first one is really good. Still something I think about on occasion today. It's not as rewatched as a lot of the other movies on my list, but it's thought-provoking, interesting, and I have found out recently that it's actually a commentary more on the journey of the Wachowskis as they transitioned.
Yeah, I've heard that as well. And for people that like The Matrix, look out in December because the 4th Matrix movie is coming out on HBO Max simultaneous to its theatrical release. They don't have any trailers or anything out for it yet, I don't think. I don't know how I feel about that because, like you said, the sequels to The Matrix were not great. There is that thing in that period where I think film studios and filmmakers thought that CGI was better than it really was. And I'll never forget that first fight scene in The Matrix Reloaded, which is the second one, where it's a rubber Keanu Reeves fighting a bunch of rubber Agent Smiths, and they're all rubbery fighting each other all over the place. And you watch it and you're like, I've seen video game cutscenes that look better than this. It looks terrible. I mean, because yeah, well, at least in the slow-mo, they did it practically. That's why the slow-mo in the original Matrix looks so good, because they did a lot of that stuff practically. I mean, it's the reason why I was talking to my dad about this the other day, for example. If you look at the first Star Wars movie versus the first Star Wars prequel movie, they're released about 20 years apart, and the first Star Wars movie still holds up better. Because the Star Wars prequel movie Phantom Menace just used CGI for everything, and the CGI in those late 90s movies just looks terrible. I mean, it looks awful. It looks incredibly unrealistic. It makes the movies look dated. And it's something to say that a 22-year-old movie looks older than a 42-year-old movie does.
Well, and on a separate note, the first one, is basically a philosophical paper put to an action movie, and the second one is just all action. It's like they dropped the story altogether for boring set piece kung fu fighting. I mean, nothing original, nothing interesting, just nothing to think about. There's just a lot of punching in faces.
It's going to be really
interesting as a movie.
It's going to be really interesting to see what they do in the 4th one, because I mean, the 3rd one was released in 95 or 96 or something like that. Vamp for a second. I'm going to see when that came out.
Let's keep it.
The second Matrix.
I'm sorry, 2003. No, the 3rd one.
Oh,
So the third Matrix came out in 2003. So that means it's been 17 years since the last Matrix movie was out. I mean, unless you count the Animatrix, which I know a lot of people really like that movie. I don't know. It's going to be interesting. My number 9. Now, whether or not you consider this horror, I think, is a matter of personal interpretation, but it's Dark City. It's Rufus Sewell. It's definitely a sort of a lot of frightening imagery. But it's just a really cool movie. It's got a great ending. It's got a great cast. Rufus Sewell's great, and it's got Kiefer Sutherland playing a very kind of counters Kiefer Sutherland character. Kiefer Sutherland is sort of famous for playing villains and tough guys, and Kiefer Sutherland in Dark City is playing more of kind of like a guy who's like almost disabled, and it's a really unique film. And I mean, substance should never, or style should never be over substance in a movie. But if it could, Dark City has just style to, I mean, kind of talking about the Matrix has a lot of style, and I think that's part of the reason why people like it. And Dark City's kind of the same way. There's a great movie there, but on top of that is just it looks great. It's filmed great. It's done mostly practical, so there's a couple of CGI scenes which aren't great, but
it's
but
another
overall,
very philosophical movie.
yeah, it's also very much of its time, I think. Like I feel like you watch that movie and it's very obviously a movie that was made in the 1990s.
I mean, the whole questioning of your reality, like you wake up and you're like, oh, now I'm a rich guy. Of course, you don't know that. And then the fact that your city's just some out there floating in space thing, it's a really neat one. It almost went on my list.
So I believe that takes us back to Kale for his number 8.
My number 8 is going to be Fight Club, 1999. Watched that movie probably 20 times or so, and mostly because it's anti-establishment. It's just crazy. It's just I found it appealing. It's a good getaway movie, like to just imagine someone just letting loose like that. That's pretty much
Yeah,
it.
and I mean, it sort of gets on to also a lot of people look at sort of the philosophical underpinnings of that movie, and I think it actually sort of speaks to today a little bit, because it talks a lot about the nature of masculinity, I think, and people sort of in a very unhealthy way dealing with what it means to be masculine. And
well, that one and the Matrix both have been co-opted by the alt-right.
Yeah, well, that's what I was going to say. I think that a lot of people take a lot of the wrong messages from that. I mean, Tyler Durden isn't supposed to be the hero of that movie. Tyler Durden's a bad guy. He's id. He's not supposed to be the hero. And I think a lot of people walk away thinking that, the Brad Pitt, spoiler alert, they're the same person.
In case they don't know what an id is, it's the hubris.
Well, yeah, it's the the base, just and they, I think people think that Tyler Durden is supposed to be the one you're rooting for, and you're not. Tyler Durden is absolutely the villain. And the whole point of Edward Norton's character arc is to get rid of him, because he can't really become a fully realized person until he gives up that sort of bullshit identity. But that one's got a lot of, and I think it's definitely a lot of the alt-right type people and people on that will, if they were to give you their interpretation of Fight Club, it would be significantly different from our interpretation, and I'm guessing significantly different from the interpretation of the filmmaker and the writer of the original novel.
My friend Tyler, when he first saw it, he was watching it right before he had to come to work when his night crew at Hy-Vee, and he had to stop it. So he stopped it with about like 5 minutes till the big reveal, and had all night to think about it and came up with the answer before. And he was like, wait a minute. He's like, and he asked me about it, and I'm like, I couldn't say yes, you're right. I couldn't do it. But yeah, he figured it out before he went home. So he had a little bit of a disappointing interaction.
Spoiler alert.
Jared Leto's in that movie.
What? Oh,
that kind of blows my mind. Like, because you don't think about that being like a Jared Leto movie, but he is. He's the guy that gets his.
He's the
face
beautiful
all
thing
fucked up.
He destroys.
Yeah. All right, Brandon, what is your number 8?
My number 8 is one that I saw in the 90s, but I don't think it was as big a deal to me as it ended up becoming. I've seen it many times since. It's Ghost in the Shell from 1995. It's one of the beginning, like, like really a lot of time spent on the animation and putting a lot of meaning into it and a lot of time, energy, and effort spent on a really good, expansive story. And like so much of the visuals also tell the story. It's really amazing.
Well, I mean, I think if you put together a list of top 5 anime, then Ghost in the Shell is probably going to be number 1 or number 2. I
Yeah,
mean,
as a
I don't think there's
movie
anybody.
anyway.
I don't think there's anybody that's going to put it below number 3. You know, I mean, like that and Akira, and I don't even really know what
Probably
else.
one of like Princess Mononoke or something.
Yeah, I still haven't seen it. I also didn't check out the Scarlett Johansson remake, which I thought looked like it wasn't going to be good. And based on the reviews, it wasn't good.
At some point after COVID, when we can get together, or even if on a Zoom thing, I wouldn't mind watching it. I think you guys would like it, but probably not as
Well,
much as me. But
What, the anime?
Vanessa loves
it's
it.
just one movie.
I'm pretty sure I've seen it. And I
Vanessa
definitely
loves it.
saw
I've
the
never.
Scarlett
Does she?
Johansson one.
Vanessa does.
Yeah, she likes it a lot. Yeah, and again, I mean, definitely the biggest anime of the 1990s. When did it? When did Akira? Is Akira 1980s or is it 90s?
I would say it was probably near the end of the 80s or beginning of the 88.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I mean, if Akira is the only one that would probably be sort of give it a run for its money as
Yeah.
far as more famous anime.
Giant baby.
So my number 8, again, still in no particular order, and sort of along with Dark City, maintaining a kind of pseudo horror feel, is a movie that I saw in the 1980s or saw in the 1990s when I was fairly young. And it's interesting. I saw this movie before I joined the military, and it's sort of interesting to watch it afterwards and sort of get more out of it. But it's Jacob's Ladder, which just barely snuck in there. It's 1990. That movie is crazy pants. It is a bananas
It is.
movie. It is one of the creepiest movies that you'll see. Oddly enough, with all of the incredibly creepy imagery, the creepiest scene in that whole movie is where his wife is trying to talk to him, and she turns and says, "Anybody home?" And when she says her eyes are all black, and I sort of got that movie scared. That scene scared the shit out of me.
And
Just the way they
it
filmed
too
it.
isn't really a horror movie, not in anything like kind of a Saw mold or anything. There isn't really any gore or anything.
But it's scarier than most horror movies you'll see.
Right.
Like that movie will scare the shit out of you in places. Trivia: Lewis Black is in that movie. Randomly, he plays the when they throw him in the tub with all the ice. The doctor that comes to see him is fucking Lewis Black, which is incredibly random. But yeah, no, it's a great movie. It's all the super practical effects. Like the people that are around him look crazy. It's got a great cast. I mean, Tim Robbins is great in it.
Tim Robbins makes a lot of it.
Danny Aiello is fantastic in that movie too. Somebody you don't see a lot, and probably never really got his due as an actor because Danny Aiello is great, and he's really good in that movie. Sort of playing like the
and he had
almost like the
some
guardian
big
angel.
hits in 90s.
Yeah. Oh, he played Jack Ruby.
Well, and he was in what's that Spike Lee one? Was it Clockers? Was he in that one?
That might be right. I can't remember. But yeah, I know he's been in at least 1 or 2 Spike Lee movies.
Yeah.
No, it's a great movie. It's a creepy movie, especially as a veteran. You sort of view that movie a little bit differently afterwards, and it's great. Just don't watch it alone at night because it is legitimately incredibly creepy. Yeah. So, Kat, what is your number 7?
My number 7 is going to be The Fifth Element, 1997.
It's a very good one. I didn't even think of that one.
Mila Jovovich.
That was on my short list, by the way. It was on my short list.
That is, you were speaking of visuals. That's got a lot of great visuals. really kind of pokes fun at what the future is going to be like. As far as you see a lot of movies about what the future is going to be like, and they'll show a lot of ridiculousness, like the cigarettes, where the butt is like 7/8 of the cigarette, and Ruby Rod is crazy as a DJ. It was just a really fun movie.
Probably the best casting of Chris Tucker to just be Chris Tucker. Like that is like 90s Chris Tucker. That is peak 90s Chris Tucker.
Yes, it is.
Well, and it's yet another incarnation of Gary Oldman. If you put him up, a picture of him from that one up against like Sirius Black, and then like the assassin movie.
The Professional.
Yeah, just the complete difference in the way he looks and acts is just crazy.
Well, and it's especially interesting with Gary Oldman because now Gary Oldman is sort of your go-to Oscar bait actor. I mean, he played Winston Churchill, and now he's just played Herman Mankiewicz in the Netflix movie Mank, which is good. I don't think it's as great as some people think it is, but I mean, he's very good in them. Yeah, that's a fun movie because it's another movie that's just kind of bananas and it's very 90s.
It is, yeah.
Like that movie doesn't get made in the 80s or the 2000s. It is a 90s movie. It is a movie that was conceived, created, and exists and lives in the 90s. And it's funny because it's a very colorful movie. Like there is, especially, I mean, a lot of the movies that I've picked, for example, Dark City and Event Horizon, they're sort of almost monochromatic kind of movies. And The Fifth Element is very colorful. There's there's a lot of
Lilu's
oranges
in like red and white. Doesn't Bruce Willis have like yellow on, and then
she's wearing orange and white and like maybe like blue or red pants or something. Like it's just like there's just a lot of color. There's a lot of color in that movie.
The opera singer's blue, I think.
And they pull stones out of her after she's dead, which that's just weird. That's a strange thing.
And the deaf guy that throws them the pool balls for billiard balls.
Which one?
Remember the scene where he asks the deaf guy to throw him the gun and he rolls him the balls?
Yes. Brandon, what is your number 7?
I went to 1995's Empire Records.
That's a good one.
It's such a good movie. It's so much fun. It's got a really young cast of people who are very talented. Liv Taylor,
Renee Zellweger.
Zellweger, yeah, that's who I was trying to think of.
Anthony LaPaglia.
Yeah.
Oh, the kid who plays Warren Beatty.
Oh yeah, yeah. No, it's very good. It's very funny. The whole scene in the store where they like catch the shoplifters. The scene at the top of the building, I think, is really good. I don't know. It's worth seeing over and over.
It's Rex Manning Day.
Yeah.
I think my only ding against Empire Records is I feel like the middle is a little weak. Like it starts off really strong and it ends really strong, but I think in the middle it dips a little bit.
Which is kind of like A Day at Work, though.
Fair enough. Okay, my number 7 is not a horror movie. So, yay. Although it is scary. It's American History X. Everybody knows Edward Norton is apparently a giant pain in the ass to work with, and apparently any project that he's on, he tries to take over and rewrite and all this kind of thing. But American History X is Edward Norton at his. I mean, I guess you could say Fight Club is his peak, but I don't know. I think maybe American History X is his peak.
It's another big cast too. Ethan Serpley, Terminator 2 kid, the little younger brother.
Edward Furlong.
Elliot Gould. Captain Sisko. He plays the principal. It's my favorite Star Trek show, and I can't think of his name.
Man Called Hawk.
Yes.
Damn it.
Son of a bitch. He's great though. Yeah. Just because I can't remember his name doesn't mean he's not great. Yeah. He's really good in that movie. I mean, the black and white scenes are filmed in black and white as obviously a metaphor for black and white, and they're frightening, and I think it's sort of a good movie for today because it shows how somebody can have these sort of reprehensible views, and yet in the right situation they can learn. It's possible. It's maybe incredibly difficult. But when Edward Norton meets the guy in prison who's like, no, I didn't do anything wrong. Like I stole a TV and I dropped it on an officer's foot on accident, and they charged me with assaulting a police officer, and that's why I'm in here for 10 years or whatever it is.
Meanwhile, Ed Norton invented curb stomping and
Right. I mean, and I'll tell you what, maybe the single scariest sound effect in movie history is the sound of that guy's teeth when they touch that curb, and it sounds like porcelain on concrete, and it just makes your fucking skin crawl. Like when you hear that, it's, oh God, it's awful. And then when Edward Norton turns around after he's done it, and the cops are there, and he looks at Edward Furlong, and he like has this look on his face like, how about that shit? And he's just like, killed a guy, or you assume killed a guy. And yeah, that movie is it's disturbing. So maybe all my movies are disturbing in some way.
Fairuza Balk's in that one too, isn't she?
That's right, she is. Oh, and Mike Hammer, Stacy Keach. Stacy Keach plays the guy who's in charge, who's the leader.
The lead racist.
Mm-hmm.
And the chubby guy from Mallrats.
Yeah, Ethan Suplee.
Yeah.
Who's not the chubby guy anymore, I guess.
Nope, he's like got all buffed.
All these guys buffed out now.
How fucking dare he? Fucking chubby people need somebody to look up to. There's a part in one of Patton Oswalt's stand-up comedy routines, which sort of applies. He's at this Hollywood premiere, and they have this great table laid out, this great spread of catering and all this other stuff, and like nobody's eating it because they're all Hollywood actors that can't, that aren't allowed to eat anything. And so he like picks up a couple things, and from behind him he sees an arm come out and grab a handful of hors d'oeuvres and put them on a plate like this. And he turns around, and it's oh God, Rambo, the first one, the cop.
Oh, Brian Denny.
It's Brian Denny, and Brian Denny looks at Patton Oswalt and says, "Character actors, who gives a shit if we're fat?"
It sounds like Brian Denny.
That reminds me of another movie, though.
Who just passed away, I think this year or last year.
Because wasn't Gladiator a 90s movie?
Yep.
Not the Australian guy one. The old one with Cuba Gooding Jr. and that guy from A Few Good Men. The younger kid that was supposed to be naive. Anyway, maybe you've never seen it.
Maybe not.
Doesn't ring a bell.
But Brian Denny, plays like,
but it is actually your turn, so you should give your number 6.
okay. Anyway, well, my number 6 is going to be Beyond the Law, 1993, Charlie Sheen, and Michael Madsen.
Beyond the Law.
Undercover cop infiltrates a biker gang based on a true story in Arizona. What were they called, Brandon?
Oh man,
I can't remember.
I want to call them like I don't know. They have like a wolf or something.
Another good cast, because I think that's got a.
But anyway,
Leon Rippey.
It's a really good cast. Good. I really think it's an underrated movie. I think it's a really good movie. And now, while I was researching that, I found out that Steven Oh My God Seagal made a movie called Beyond the Law too. So
I'll stick with the biker one.
Yeah. So anyway, yeah, it's a really good movie. I like bikes, so obviously that's appealing to me.
I've seen Beyond the Law multiple times,
and it was before Charlie Sheen really went crazy. So
yeah.
Well, I don't think it was before he went crazy. I think it's before we knew he had gone crazy.
Okay.
Because I think he had actually gone crazy a long time before it was sort of common knowledge.
All right.
Yeah, no, that's a good movie. That's a fun one. Brandon, what is your number 6?
Okay, I went with The Big Lebowski.
I'm sorry, I've not heard of that film.
It's
Who's in that?
Talk about a great cast. I mean, man, it's got Jeff Bridges, Um,
I'm by the way,
John Goodman, Steve Buscemi. What's the woman's name? That's who I just blanked on. Julianne Moore. Julianne Moore.
I'm not going to say a lot about that movie now because, as I'm sure Brandon is very much aware, we will probably be talking about that movie again in the near future.
Yeah. One of the most quotable.
Suffice to say, yes.
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 It's one of the few movies that every once in a while, some brief little snippet will play in your head and you'll go, oh yeah, that part. And you just kind of laugh at that part, completely unconnected to the rest of the movie. Just this little clip will run in your head. It's just like, this scene was hilarious. And so is this one over here.
He fixes the cable?
Yeah. Yeah.
He fixes the cable? Yeah, no, I'm not trying to truncate discussion on the Big Lebowski, far from it. But we will definitely be mentioning that one again. Okay, so my number 6 is another repeat, but it's The Matrix. And this is so originally I was going to do this as top 5 and I couldn't get it down to top 6 because there's no way I could not have The Matrix on this list. Now, talking about the philosophical implications of it, I am not super into philosophy. But the thing is, you can completely ignore all the philosophical aspects to The Matrix and it's still a great action movie. Just from an action perspective, the action is done in a way which is visceral. It is done in a way which it has impact. It's done really, really well. I mean, it's the first time I think people looked at Keanu Reeves and thought that maybe he wasn't talentless, because I mean, today with sort of the way that Keanu Reeves is perceived, he's sort of this wonder boy. But at the time, he was Ted Theodore Logan or Phyllis Preston. Which one was he?
Yeah, he was Ted Theodore Logan.
Ted Theodore Logan. And that was who he was. I mean, there's sort of a lot of good feelings towards the surfer movie.
Point Break.
I don't have a lot of great feelings towards that movie because it's still basically just Keanu Reeves doing what he had done before. And I think The Matrix is the first time where it's like, oh, this guy can actually maybe do some things.
Well, and Speed
was
memorable moments, but it wasn't him.
Well, and Speed is kind of like, it's just a continuation of him from Point Break, basically.
Yeah.
I mean, his character in Point Break and his character in Speed are basically the same character.
So,
and it's practical. The practical nature of the effects is that movie doesn't feel dated. That movie feels less dated than the sequels do.
Out of curiosity, Matrix or Equilibrium?
Equilibrium.
I would say The Matrix, but only because of the people behind the camera. I think Equilibrium, if you take like as concepts, I probably like Equilibrium better. I don't know. That's really tough. I don't know. I didn't even think about Equilibrium for this list, to be honest. I totally forgot about it. That's a great film.
If we could turn people on to Equilibrium, I think that's worth mentioning it even there.
Also, great cast.
Yes.
Christian Bale, the guy who gets killed and everything.
Yeah.
Sean Bean. Sean Bean.
Tay Diggs.
Well,
that's right. I forgot about him.
Yeah, but I'm talking about the good cast members. I'm sorry.
Who's the Scottish guy?
Tay Diggs was born without a personality.
He's pretty. Who's the Scottish guy?
I can't think of his name. He's the guy that played Robert the Bruce in Braveheart.
Yeah.
He's got a pretty small role in it, though. He's only in it kind of at the very end.
It's very much along the lines of 1984.
Yeah, no, it's a very good movie. To be honest, I probably would have considered it higher if I had considered it, but I just didn't. I forgot about it entirely.
Well, you had mentioned honorable mentions. I would say Equilibrium and Mean Guns. Both.
Well, actually, hold that thought. What I'm going to do is after we all give our number 2s, before we give our number 1s, I'm going to go around and we'll just do a couple of honorable mentions.
Okay.
We'll just see, mention at that point. Okay, Kale, you're we are into the top 5.
Number 5.
So what is your number 5 greatest movie?
Well,
The decade of the 1990s.
Mentioned
You have
Unless
to let me
Empire
finish my
Records.
intro of you. Otherwise, you've ruined the effect.
Okay, go ahead.
No, I'm not going to intro you.
Fine, be a big baby.
I
Number
will.
5 is Empire Records, 1995.
Never
You
heard
guys
of
already
it.
mentioned almost everything about it. The main character, the main protagonist, I think his name's Rory Cochrane. He was also in
he
Days
is in
and
that.
Confused,
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
along with Liv Tyler.
But he's not the main guy's the blonde guy though, isn't he? The one that ends up being in that.
No, he wasn't. Well, there wasn't really
movie
a
with the
main
party.
guy. Yeah, it's his name escapes me. You guys keep talking
The
about it. I'll
AJ
tell you.
character, they had to have an AJ character for Liv Tyler to have a love interest. Apparently, she wants her fantasy boyfriend to be named AJ. If you follow that, because Armageddon, AJ.
Ethan Embry. Ethan
Oh,
Embry.
okay. Yeah.
He was the guy who was like the goofy '90s kid in
funny
like
movie.
40 different things.
Yeah, he was in. I want to say "Can't Hardly Wait," which was also a '90s movie. But it's not really.
No, I don't think he's in that one.
Yeah, he is.
No?
He's the main
Is that the
character.
party movie? Is that the party
Yeah.
movie?
In fact, that movie gets extra points for me because where is he going to at the end of the movie? He's going to study with Kurt Vonnegut at the University of Iowa.
After he goes to a phone booth and talks to a drunk angel,
Yes.
who was played by.
Oh, that's she was
Is
kind of
that
a
Téa
rom-com,
Leoni?
huh?
Is that Téa Leoni?
No, it's I'll have to look up her name. That's a good movie. Honestly, Can't Hardly Wait should have been on my list too. I really like that movie a lot. I think
And
it's
the main bad guy in that, or bad guy, the main punk character, the like jock guy.
well,
He
that's
reminds
funny
me
because
of Bradley.
there's two of them because it's Peter Fasinelli is the main one, but then it's also got hold on. He always played he was in Stand By Me. He was the fat kid in Stand By Me. Chris O'Donnell.
Yeah.
Chris O'Connell. You're right. Yes, Chris O'Connell. Yeah. It's funny. We weren't talking about Empire. Now we're talking about Can't Hardly Wait. Can't Hardly Wait's great. I love that movie.
But Empire Records is, I guess, that's like a tentpole movie for a lot of other references. I guess. I love when you
It's
have
very
a
good.
whole bunch of references to other things from one source.
No, I think it's a really good movie. Like I said, I do think there is a little bit of a dip in the middle of that movie where it kind of slows down a little bit.
Like when
But-
Warren's trying to pick.
Oh no! Also, it has that movie has the girl from The Craft, Robin Tooney. Robin Tooney's like the girl that shaves her head in that movie.
Yeah.
The Craft also. Well, we're not doing honorable mentions right now, but all right. So
that's got what's her name in it too. It's a Veruca.
yeah, Veruca's.
Not Veruca Salt. That's a band.
I know.
I keep mixing that.
What's the actress's name and the?
That's a '90s band, I guess.
We're not. We apparently don't actually know anything about movies. I feel like this will be very relatable to people because half of our conversations are, wait a minute, who is that? Is that person? And then the other person's like,
It's
no,
that
not
guy.
them. It's the other person. It was in that other movie. And it's like,
Okay.
oh, yeah, them.
Off topic, real quick. There's always that guy. You know, he's in like 100 movies, but you have no idea what his name is. For me, growing up, that was Billy Drago.
Who's Billy Drago? Because I know
Those
the name
fucking
and I know
movies.
I've seen him in movies. What's something he was in?
I can't even remember now. It's been so long. And he hasn't been in a movie.
By the way,
since, like,
Kale.
The Mechanic.
Oh, boy, that's a hell of a movie. That was '90s too, wasn't it? Wow. Okay. Brandon, what is your number 5? Oh, but first, Kale, the angel was Jenna Elfman, who was also a big actress in the 1980s.
Okay, number 5 for me was Tombstone. 1993, big cowboy movie. Like cowboy movies, even in the early 90s, were not being made a whole lot. But it's a story of the gunfight at the OK Corral. It's got all the Earps. But I mean, it's got to talk about a cast. I mean, like everybody who was famous at the time and ends up becoming famous. I mean, it's got Kurt Russell, uh,
Other people.
Powers Booth.
I still
And,
use that. I still use that Powers Booth GIF where he's like, where he looks at Wyatt Earp. He's like, "Well, bye."
Yeah,
It's such a
Val Kilmer, Sam Elliott,
Michael Bean.
Michael Bean, the guy that plays Ike Clanton ends up becoming kind of famous. He's in
Jeff Fay.
He's
No,
the general
my problem
guy
with that movie is I always get them mixed up with the people in Wyatt
with the
Earp.
cloth marks on his face.
he's the one. He ends up being the general that comes down in Avatar, the
Yeah.
new alien people movie.
Oh, Steven.
Yeah, that's right, Steven something.
What movie was he in where he was blind and like killed a bunch of people in his house?
Stephen Ray. He was in Don't Look. Don't breathe. Breathless.
I don't know.
It was a
really
horror movie
good
where he played a blind guy.
Like, don't make a sound. Or
One of Val Kilmer's best performances in a serious role. So many
With the
good
cop.
lines in there.
the cop.
Well, I like where he's like, it's Frederick fucking Chopin.
I am going
You're not
to
wearing any blue musts.
I am going to declare war on the comments section by saying that I like Dennis Quaid's Doc Holliday better than Val Kilmer's.
That's just insane.
It's
I'm your
I-
Huckleberry.
What is wrong with
I speak only
you? Who
truth.
hurt you?
I speak only truth. It's a good
I
movie.
mean, Dennis Quaid was the only good part of Wyatt Earp, but still.
Well, I mean, Wyatt Earp is a ponderous movie to say the least. It has Jeff Fahey playing Ike Clanton.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's a point for or against it, but no, I think I have grown to the point where I can admit that Tombstone is probably a better movie than Wyatt Earp, but I will die on the hill for Dennis Quaid as Doc Holliday. He is so good in that
And
movie.
you and I went to the place where they filmed that final scene where they're dancing in the snow. That was on that old backlot in Arizona or in California.
Old Tombstone, but not Old Tombstone, Old Tucson. By the way, just for the listeners, it's a good point to bring this up. If you ever get down to Tucson, there is a town that was built outside of I keep saying Tombstone, outside of Tucson. It was just built to be a Western movie set, and it's called Old Tucson. And you can go there. A bunch of it was burned down, I think, in the like mid 90s or late 90s or something like that. So it's not as complete as it once was, but it is an absolute not to be missed place to go if you're in the area.
I remember when we took the tour there, they were saying that during that scene where it was supposed to be snowing and they were all bundled up for it, it was actually like 90 degrees and they were just sweating the whole time they were shooting it. But
yeah, and they filmed literally hundreds of Westerns on that set. It's so funny because, and again, we do digressions. It happens. If you go to Tombstone, the actual Tombstone, which is just outside of Sierra Vista, it is incredibly commercial and kind of fake. And the fake Western town they built feels more accurate than the actual real Western town. And I think we talked about that a little bit when we went to both of those, where Tombstone just feels like a little tourist trap off the highway, whereas Old Tucson, which is a totally fake town that was built just to film Westerns on, feels more legitimate.
right.
All right, so my number 5. We're back to sort of a horror movie, but not 7.
What's in the box?
This is the less said about Kevin Spacey, knowing what we know now, the better, but he is fantastic in the movie. I mean, Brad Pitt, there's sort of the line of sort of cop partners that just work really well. And Morgan Freeman and Brad Pitt work great together because they're different, but they're not comically different. They both seem like people that could actually exist. Because like Brad Pitt's kind of a hothead, but he's also a cop who's an intelligent human being. And like, he's not going to, break his shoulder to get out of a straitjacket. Not that I'm calling particular assholes individually, but and Morgan Freeman is an experienced detective, but he's also like, he's a human being too, and he's like, this guy's kind of an asshole, and they work so great together. Some of the scenes in the movie are terrifying. but I still don't think you could really call it a horror movie.
You could put that at the top of your list of Kevin Spacey movies that were gigantic hits in the 90s.
Yeah, I mean, there's that and American Beauty, and I mean that's probably his two biggest movies.
That's it.
No,
Well, I mean,
it's not it. Usual Suspects is in there.
Oh Jesus!
damn it.
And yeah, Usual Suspects very good too. But yeah, but
the Kahuna thing.
Yeah, but Big Kahuna is a tiny little movie.
Yeah, it's not a big
I mean,
one.
that's not that. I mean, that's Peter
I completely
Fasinelli,
forgot about that. That's got
Kevin
John C.
Spacey,
Reilly in it.
and
And that might not even be 90s.
no, it's definitely 90s.
Danny DeVito.
Danny DeVito. That's what I was trying to think of. It's just a little movie. I think it's a really cool little movie. And I think it's
What am I thinking?
famous playwright David Mamet. Did David Mamet write Big Kahuna?
That
I don't know. You lost me at writing stuff.
No, but Seven's just it's a really amazing movie. It is it's Fincher, isn't it?
Who?
It's David Fincher, isn't it?
Oh yeah. For
Yeah.
Of course it is.
7.
And I mean, it's got so much style to it. It's disturbing, but it's also kind of cool. It's got I mean, one of the greatest endings. It's not a particularly quotable movie throughout, but like the one quote at the end of that movie, like you hear all the time. Like it's just like it's funny where a movie just has one quotable line, but it's like a hugely quotable line. And yeah, I love that movie. It's great. It's got a great cast too. I mean, there's other really big stars kind of just speckled throughout it here and there. It's really.
I can recognize how good a movie it is, but not want to watch it again.
I mean, yeah. I mean, some of those movies you don't. I mean, there's movies out there that are great, and you're like, man, I don't ever want to see that.
Yeah.
I mean,
one
12
other
Years
one that might be on your list that I suspect might be on your list also qualifies as one that I can recognize as good, but probably don't want to see again.
I think there's probably at least two that you could put in that category. Here we're gonna take a brief break for our sponsor, probably non-existent, and we can go ahead and just edit this out. I need to grab a drink and get some water and run to the restroom. So for the editor listening in, this is the part you edit out, and I'll be right back. And if you guys want to go and get something to drink and go to the bathroom, you can.
I actually put my drink next to me so I can do that while we talk.
You know what you need is a stadium buddy.
I'll be right back.
Brandon
As we have been doing this, my list of honorable mentions has been growing.
Yeah, like I completely forgot about so many movies. You guys mentioned characters, and I'm like, he was in that. Oh fuck.
Yeah. Well,
This
I'm
will be
already
an
up to like
outtake.
5 honorable
Like
mentions.
making outtakes. I gotta go pee too. Don't film me getting up. It looks like a fat person getting up.
It's filming. There's nothing I can do about it. It's on your end.
Stop this madness. You gotta edit this part out. I know you sort of. No, it's not.
Every single hour, Jeff Bezos makes approximately $9 million. And no one complains about the prices of goods on Amazon's website going up. McDonald's CEO Steve Eastbrook makes approximately $9,000 an hour, but no one complains about the price of a Big Mac going up.
Is everybody at Kale's house yelling right now?
Maybe.
Sounds great.
He went to pee too.
Well, they are. They're smart. All of his friends are smart. I told his friend.
I was just telling Kale that my honorable mentions has grown to 5 so far as we were talking.
I'm trying to think of one. Damn it. It's like I should have a browser tab opened or something over here.
So my family just referred to you guys as smart nerds.
Okay.
Well,
We should write a show, call it the Small Bang Theory.
But I hate Big Bang Theory
Why?
because it's a bad show.
Anyway,
Kale's like, anyway. I know.
This is the only podcast where you have a commentary track at the same time you have the actual track.
yes.
Okay, everybody's back. We're good to go.
1 second. Give me just a second.
I didn't actually stop recording. I was just
Nice.
Yeah, I
Stop
know.
punching yourself out.
Well, we're gonna know because I'm gonna say, and we're back, and that's when you know to cut. Stop it when I say we got our sponsors
No,
now.
that is all outtakes.
You know
just
what?
go through
Why
an
don't you go
entire
fuck
bottle
yourself?
of that.
Maybe I will.
Okay.
I think I'm pretty good.
Okay. You guys ready?
Yeah,
No.
I still have to get up at 4, so my
All right.
time winds down.
Go.
All
I'm
right.
kidding.
And all right, and we're back. So now we are up to number 4. We're in the top 4. Kale, what is your number 4?
Number
What is
4
your
is already
number 4
been
movie
mentioned.
of the 1990s.
The Professional, 1994. You already mentioned it.
Nice.
The guy's
I don't think
name-
it was listed. I don't think you didn't list it, did you?
No, I
You
didn't
guys
listen.
mentioned it.
We mentioned it, but we didn't actually talk about it. And that's a movie to talk about. There's a lot to talk about in that movie.
The beginning of Queen Amidala. Gary Oldman, obviously, with that where he does the thing and he's like, I don't know what that's going on about.
Where he's got the little thing and he always shakes. He's like,
Yeah, because
Yeah.
little magic power pills with
he is creepy as fuck in that movie.
He's
He is
creepy in
so
a
scary.
lot of things. But and then Leon, I can never remember his last name.
Sean Reno.
Okay. I think I really liked him. I liked him in Ronin, but I don't even know that's a 90s movie.
So I
But-
think it is, but I just wanted to mention. So that movie was actually released as several different titles. So in the U.S., it was originally released as The Professional. It was later released as Leon the Professional, and in other countries, it was released as The Cleaner.
And that's
But-
it, Kale,
For,
when you were talking Gary, he's always turning away from the camera to do the thing. Is that
yeah, and then you see him like the one scene where like they got the camera like pointed down at him and he's like having this little pill fit.
I like the everyone.
yeah?
It's such a good one.
But like I really
Gary
you know,
Oldman.
it wasn't just shoot 'em up. It was like creative shoot 'em up. Like the part where he's like up above the doorway, he like drops down with twin guns, just crazy. And I mean, and the thing was, he was supposed to be like a bad guy. He's an anti-hero because he's protecting this little girl whose family got killed.
Well, I think he's a villain. He's just a villain with
He's a villain
some
with a
level of
conscience.
humanity. And Gary Oldman's character is just a villain who has left all humanity behind.
It's like I only kill the bad people.
Yeah, no, and it's a really visceral movie. Like the action, I've been thinking about this more often. I went back and watched the old Friday the 13th movies, and it really got me to thinking about when violence is effective and when it's not effective. In movies like The Professional, the violence is very effective because it feels very real. Like it feels like these terrible things are actually happening. And actually, I'm going to mention that again in another movie I have coming up on my list in a little bit, because so many movies out there, there's violence, but it doesn't really feel real. I mean, especially in some of the Friday the 13th movies, which at the time are considered to be, some of the most violent movies that are coming out, and you watch them today, and you're like, well, that's not really much. I mean, it's clearly that's a prosthetic.
Most of the middle ones in Friday the 13th.
Although some of them are better than you think. I'll tell you, Friday the 13th Part 2 is very much an underrated Friday the 13th movie. And I think Part 3 is probably overrated.
As far as action movies go, as far as the violence in action movies, like they always show you like the special forces guy or whatever, because like that's someone who's been trained to handle that kind of pain or whatever. Because the stuff you see in these movies, like you see people getting shot or stabbed or whatever, it's like the fight's over, man. That most
Yeah, you're done.
95% of the population is going to just stop there. So as far as realism goes, I mean, nobody's going to keep fighting on after, oh, shit, I got a knife in my kidney. Well, I'll just keep fighting because I'm Superman.
I'm good.
All right, Brandon, what is your number 4?
Okay, my number 4 is The Crow.
Just
Man.
quickly, that was very nearly on my list.
Talk about
Very high.
memorizing lines. I'm sure at one point I could have done the entire movie with them as they said it. The soundtrack is arguably one of the best soundtracks in movie history. It's innovative. It's smart. It does things that at the time nobody did. It's the last movie of Brandon Lee. So he kind of really goes out on, kind of like that Jim Morrison vibe, young and good looking and doing like his best work ever and all that.
Well,
It's really
two things that I think about The Crow that maybe aren't talked about enough are, first of all, it's a really, really good cast.
Yeah.
I mean, all around. Tony Todd's in that fucking movie. And you forget about, a cast is good when you almost forget that Tony Todd is in the movie. I mean, like T-Bird's great. Tintin is great. I mean,
Michael
everybody's great.
Wincott and his voice. Oh man.
Well, I was kind of saving him till the end, but yeah, I mean, I'm talking even the sort of lower rent characters. The little girl's really good.
Yeah,
Like
the
everybody's
girl,
really good in that movie.
Even the wife, I can remember her face, coming up to get him, the ghost her.
Well, I was coming of age at that time, so I remember her face very well too. And the other
That was
thing
a
is,
different kind of coming.
it's a really simple movie.
It is.
There is not a lot of moving parts, and sometimes those movies are the best when you don't overcomplicate things.
There's very much a beginning, middle, and end, and some of it too is the lore behind it. Like I've heard like 3 different versions of where the accident happened that killed Brandon Lee, and who knows which one's the real one. Maybe nobody, but it's such a dark and atmospheric. It's in that same line as Dark City, and it's just this weird, dark, atmospheric movie that honestly I still don't think a lot of people actually saw.
Well, I think that I don't know. It's such a little movie, and I think here's the way I think about it. So whenever I go to a restaurant, and I see where they have a menu that's 10 pages long, and there's 15 items per page, and all I want to do is I want to tell them, no, do one thing really well. And if The Crow does anything, it does one thing really well. The action scenes are filmed fantastically. They are as practical as they could be done. Obviously, they had to do some digital stuff in post-production for obvious reasons. But they did one thing, and they did that one thing really, really well.
And they managed to world build it in just one movie too. Like the doors that open on the bottom for T-Bird. I mean, it just Oaks and road beers. It's just these little things just world builds in one movie. Oh, sorry, Barbie.
And it's funny because if you actually look, and I think it was a 90s movie too, the second Crow movie, there is a ton of stuff about that. That apparently it was I did walk out of that movie. But apparently the studio just chopped that movie to pieces. That the director had one idea of something he wanted to do with it, and the studio hated it. Another one, which, well, I'll get into that when we talk about our honorable mentions.
Brandon parked on top of somebody else's car, and then we went and walked out of the movie like 40 minutes in. I think it was so you wouldn't get caught.
That's funny. I walked out of the movie, but I didn't see it with you guys.
No.
I walked out of it in a different theater at a different time entirely. All right. So my number, what are we at? 4?
Yeah.
I couldn't leave this. It's one of those ones I don't watch as often as I used to, but it's just basically a perfect film. I mean, the casting is great. The story is great. And they took just enough Stephen King to make it good and get rid of the rest of it. And that's, of course, Shawshank Redemption. Shawshank Redemption is just a master class in filmmaking. And it's not like particularly inventive. it's actually very much like we were talking about The Crow. They just did one thing and they did it really well. It's not super complicated, but it's just really well done. Everybody that's cast is great. It's got these sort of great subplots that play well as subplots, like the older guy gets released and sort of not understanding how to live outside of prison. I mean, it's Morgan Freeman and Tim
Clancy
Robbins and
Brown.
Clancy Brown playing fucking Clancy Brown as a prison guard. It's
Yeah,
just,
yeah.
I mean, the movie does nothing wrong.
There can be
There's
only
not
one prison guard.
there's not a single thing you can point out that movie did wrong. There's nothing you could add to or take away from that movie to make it any better. And it's weird because I don't think about it very often. It's not a movie that I watch particularly often, but you go back and you watch the movie again, and you're like, this is basically a perfect film. And I mean, if that's not good enough to get on the top 10 list, then what the fuck is?
Well, and that the
Do you have any complaints?
prison front on that one is the same one as the Stephen King television show.
Right. Yep.
And it's the one that's in the town that Andrea's from, Moundsville.
Oh, really?
So it's an actual place.
Yeah, they didn't film it, I don't think, in the prison, but the prison front, the big Gothic looking prison front thing, that is, I've been to that building.
All right. So
Fun
now,
fact.
because numbers are arbitrary, but we don't like that, we are into the most important category of the top three. Top three films of the 1990s. Appropriate gasps all around. So, Kale, what is your number three movie of the 1990s?
My number 3 movie is also from 1994. It's apparently a Stephen King film. It's about a guy that went to a prison and eventually broke out of.
I'm not sure what you're talking about.
I think it's called Shawshank Redemption.
I'm sorry, I've never heard of that movie.
Wow, both as number 3. Oh.
No, mine was number 4.
Oh, okay.
But I mean, who gives a shit? That's fucking close enough.
Well,
So what do you think?
Well, we covered most of the greatness of the creation of the movie on the creative side of it. We didn't really talk about the theme side of it though, and just the idea of someone who is, wrongfully accused of something that didn't happen, or didn't happen exactly the way that they thought it happened, and ends up serving years upon years for.
Well, to be fair, we don't know if I don't think they were clear on whether or not Tim Robbins killed his wife or not. We're clear that he says he didn't, but I don't know if that's.
Well, remember the part with the kid that talked to another cellmate that said that he went into some golfer's house or whatever, and
yeah, I guess,
killed
but
his wife, but it wasn't him.
I guess one of the things I like about the movie is they make you feel sorry for the people that did do it. I mean, Morgan Freeman's character says, "I'm the only guilty man in this prison," and that just because somebody committed a crime doesn't mean they now are immune from being sympathetic.
Yeah.
Because everybody makes mistakes, and
Yeah.
I sort of like the idea of leaving it ambiguous as to whether or not he killed his wife or not. And yeah, I think you're probably right. I think he probably didn't. But I like the idea of making.
It's definitely a statement
convicts
against
sympathetic.
the prison system.
No, it's
Because-
it's an amazing film. It's an amazing film.
Okay, I'll leave it at that. I'm not gonna.
I wasn't telling you to shut up. Okay, Brandon, what
I
is
think
your?
we covered all the bases. I just, it's really good feeling at the end when he finally gets free, and the rain on him is like raining down freedom or whatever. I don't know, America, Eagles, whatever. And then he goes to Mexico because yay, freedom, Mexico.
And he starts a bar called the Titty Twister.
He did.
Who knew those two franchises were related? All right, Brandon, what is your number 3 movie of the 1990s?
Okay. In 1995, they made an action movie that was over 3 hours long, and I don't care. I'll still watch it. It's called Heat. Talk about an amazing cast. It's got Al Pacino, Robert De Niro, Val Kilmer again.
Danny Trejo.
Yeah, Danny Trejo's in it. man, just tons of people.
Tom Sizemore.
Michael, not Michael Madsen.
Tom Sizemore.
Tom Sizemore. That's it. Yeah.
Who's the guy that played Magua in Last of the Mohicans?
Oh yeah.
He's one of the cops.
Yeah, and the guy that plays the pushed the lotion on her skin is one of the cops too.
Yeah, and I can never think of his name, and he's been in like 8 million things.
Said something.
He was also in Wrong Turn, I think.
Such a good movie. Amazing scenes. It does not feel like 3 hours. Like from when they're
That's
literally
a 3-hour movie.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's long, very long.
I mean, there's obviously the big scene where De Niro and Pacino are on screen together for the first time in the cafe, but even just when they're staking out, like they're in the truck just staking out that place, you know, and the cop just moves and his gun hits the thing. It's just, it feels so gritty and real. Talk about another great soundtrack. I mean, everything just fit on it really well. The scene where they're escaping from the bank is just brutal. It feels like caught on CCTV kind of thing.
If there's one thing I learned from that movie, it's that guy does not get to watch his fucking television set.
Yeah. Yeah.
During the bank robbery scene, there's no background music. You can hear the echo of the gunshots off the buildings down the street.
Well, and they get separated and they're just kind of like firing. At first, you know, they're all coordinated and moving, and then like Tom Sizemore gets separated, and like Danny Trejo dies pretty quick in that one, I think. And
well, no, Danny Trejo isn't there.
No, that's right. He betrays them. That's right.
He doesn't betray him. He gets followed and he has to drop out because he said he's being trailed.
Yeah.
I think that if you take
who's the guy that comes after him, the killer?
Wangro?
Yeah. That's God, that guy's pretty famous too. Is that
Then there's the guy
it's a huge cast.
Yeah.
The guy that's on Mom now that was on Armageddon.
For me, if you take just the after bank robbery scene, that's probably
Kevin Gage.
That's probably one of the best action scenes, like one of the best heist scenes ever filmed. It's incredible. It's just filmed so well.
Multiple camera angles. I mean, multiple points of view. A brilliant plan for how they were going to do it. There's very like almost no holes in the movie. No, like very good.
Yeah, it's great. It's the first time you actually, and the first and best time you get to see Al Pacino and De Niro together on screen, because they did that other movie together, and I think they've actually done 2 now.
Well, and there's Godfather 2, but they were never in it.
Right, but there was the one. It was Righteous Kill, where they're both cops.
Yeah,
that was.
But it's like they're 75-year-old cops that are. Like, how are you still on the beat? Like, it's just it didn't work. I just think it didn't work. Yeah,
but in Heat, they're still young enough to pull it off.
So for me, number 3 is apparently the best horror movie of the 1990s, because I like horror movies, in case you couldn't tell.
Don't say Scream.
It's totally Scream. It's not Scream, because Scream's not. I think Scream's an interesting movie. I think it probably should be on my honorable mentions. But I don't think about Scream. Like Scream doesn't call back to me. Like this movie does, and that is Candyman. I think Candyman is an absolute masterpiece of a film. I mean, get rid of everything else, all the great stuff. The score alone is incredible. It's one of the best horror movie scores of any movie ever. It's Philip Glass, this really like sort of delicate little thing. It's just amazing. I mean, I would put the score for Candyman up against the score for Halloween. It is just an incredible score. And then you get Tony Todd, who is just like, you know, the voice. I mean, he's incredible. And the other thing that people don't notice about Candyman, I think, until you do it on repeated viewings, which I've repeatedly viewed that movie, is that there's actually very little on-screen violence. There's a lot of blood. You know, when Helen first wakes up and everything's, you know, she's in this puddle of blood, and there's, you know, the dog has been killed and all this other stuff, but you don't actually see the violence. And you don't see the violence until, and spoiler alert, for people who haven't seen a, 28-year-old movie, the part where Candyman kills her doctor. And it's what I was talking about earlier, sort of the visceral violence, where that's the only time Candyman just fucking unload. I mean, he sticks his claw right through this guy's, through his back, through his stomach, and he's like got this crazy look at his face and like pulls it out and he's like ripping him apart. And it's like up until that point, there has been all of this kind of build up to Candyman. And he has such presence because it's fucking Tony Todd. And I mean, is there anybody that has more presence than Tony Todd? Um, and but for that to work in the movie, you have to have at least one scene where Candyman fucks somebody up. And that scene where he kills the doctor, if you rewatch, that scene is just terrifying. I mean, he rips that guy apart. And again, they don't have the, I think, the budget to probably do it as much as they could have done it, but it is just a masterful scene. It is a basically perfect horror movie.
I understand the feeling of wanting to tear someone apart. With a
And
knife.
you guys have both seen it, haven't you?
Yeah, only like once, but yeah.
I'm not. A
I
horror
would
person.
I would highly recommend rewatching that movie now. It is, I feel like I always liked Candyman, but when we rewatched it a year or two ago, I feel like I vastly underrated Candyman for what it really was, which is a really, really solid film, like a much better film than I thought. And again, the score is amazing. It's just got a great score. Anyway, I'll stop gushing about Candyman. But that movie, I'm telling you, if you haven't seen Candyman, if you're gonna go see one horror movie, go see Candyman. It's a great movie. And
Shouldn't it be called?
the sequels aren't terrible. The first sequel is good-ish. The second sequel is not good.
Why is he called Candyman?
Sweets for the sweet.
But I thought like the theme
Oh.
was honey or something.
Okay, let's keep moving. Kale, what is your number 2 movie? Of
My
the
number 2
1990s?
movie is a movie from 1995. It's got Al Pacino and Robert De Niro in it, and one's a cop and one's a criminal.
Scent of a
You
Woman.
you may have mentioned it before. It's about temperature. It's called Heat.
I was at
Originally,
least somewhat certain that you would
a
have
Burt
Heat,
Reynolds
Mike
movie.
would have Big Lebowski.
Of course.
Never heard either one of those films. I'm sorry.
You've never heard of Burt Reynolds? Anyway, yeah. So great movie. I think we covered most of it. A lot of good actors, really great scenes, really great writing, really just up and down good movie, good soundtrack. Few moments you mentioned, like when the cops think that they're trying to check out the crew, and it turns out the crew is just trapping them so they can scope them out.
Yeah.
The cafe scene with two of the most iconic actors of our time.
Pacino is in
and
that
just-
in that
And
shot. He's
just
like, okay,
so
motherfucker.
subtle, so smooth, like velvet, just, and it's just like the whole time you're sitting in your seat going, and
Well, I
And-
wasn't, but sure, you can.
and then and of course the ending, which is inevitable, and I thought that the ending scene was really solid. I really enjoyed that. I thought it just the last visuals, the last part of the soundtrack, just following the storyline. I thought it was just a really good moment in the movie.
Well, I think it's kind of interesting because what does the ending mean? And that's something I never thought about, because I think especially when the 90s were happening, I was relatively young. And so I was thinking more of, oh, cool, he did the thing. But the ending really is saying that Robert De Niro's character is full of shit and he's wrong. Because he did everything the way he was supposed to do everything, his sort of little philosophy,
He's got
and he
the
was fucking
code.
wrong. He got caught.
No, he got caught because he clung on to something, and he was told not to cling on to something, and he did.
No, but he walked away. That was the whole thing. He walked away from the girl.
He walked
He
away
said,
too late, though.
no, I don't think that's the case. I think he walked away.
And I think
he
the
s-
part that you're forgetting
caught
is that
anyway.
he said he would never go back.
And he
He'll
came
never
back.
go back, and he won't go back. So in the end, and really, he won. He didn't go back.
I don't think he did, because I think the movie proves him wrong. I think the movie proves that his philosophy was bullshit. And that in the end, what Robert De Niro was to Al Pacino was another criminal that he caught, maybe a little bit more interesting of a one. And I think that sort of says something about the philosophy of the 1990s, that it, you look at films, I think, differently as you get older. And when I think back on Heat, I think what they were saying was, like, Robert De Niro's character has all these philosophical ideas and these, he's really intense, sort of a thinking man's criminal. But in the end, he just got shot by a cop because, when you do crime, usually they catch you.
Well, it's very Hollywood of the good guy to win in the end, of course. The man in the white hat always wins.
Well, I don't know if Al Pacino's really a good guy. I mean, Al Pacino's a douchebag in that movie. He's an asshole.
But he's a cop, so therefore he's right.
Well, I mean, he
That-
wasn't robbing banks.
That was like one of the first big Michael Mann thing too, wasn't it?
Could be. All right, so
That was a
number
really
two-
great movie. We can debate this for till we're blue in the face.
Brandon, what is your number 2 movie of the 1990s?
Coming in at the end of the 90s in 1998, Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. There is
I didn't
possibly
even think about that one. I'm so disappointed in myself that I didn't even have it on the list. Wasn't even on my radar.
I went over it like 4 times.
There's 3 movies that you could argue as the most quotable: The Big Lebowski, the Tarantino one, Pulp
Pulp
Fiction,
Fiction.
and Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. I think Fear and Loathing might take it. If not, it's really, really close. I mean, from right at the moment where they're in Bat Country, which isn't even a thing that's even really happening, to where he's asking, like, is this
You don't know that.
a place to park? And then, like, at the end, he just freaks out and then, like, runs away. It's just,
Tell me about the goddamn golf.
But I think that's the first Benicio del Toro. Not the first the first like big Benicio del Toro movie.
it's certainly the first one where I realized who Benicio del Toro was.
Right. I mean, I'm sure he made movies before that, but it's the first one that I can think of where I was like, oh, that's a guy that's, gonna do stuff.
Yeah, and it's the first time I think that I really thought, wow, Johnny Depp is really good when he wants to be. He's really good. Because he really plays Hunter S. Thompson very well, and his mannerisms are perfect. He looks just like him.
Well, he is very much a character actor, unlike Brian Dennehy.
It's so good. It's back before what's his name got a hold of him and started putting him in goofy.
Tim.
No, actually, Edward Scissorhands was probably before that. But
Tim Burton.
Yeah, that was way before.
yeah. But no, Fear and Loathing is really, really good. If you haven't seen it, watch it, laugh. You'll be glad you did.
How come Tim Burton's never put Johnny Depp and Michael Keaton in a movie together?
I'm gonna
The
blow your
book-
mind.
The book too is really, really good.
I'm gonna blow your mind. Benicio del Toro was in Big Top Pee Wee.
What?
Just something to know. Okay, so my number 2. Which
Everything I know is a lie.
I just watched this movie with Vanessa the other day, and it's funny. It's not the best movie of the 90s, but it's the best movie. It's one of the best movies of the 90s. This movie has problems, and but the concept is so great, and the ideas behind it are so great. It has to be here, and it's Cube. Cube. It's
Oh, I forgot about that.
it has serious weaknesses. The movie does have weaknesses, but I feel like the concept is so incredible, and they carry it out so well. And I think
Talk
the
about
actors-
simple.
Oh,
I mean, it's an unknown cast in a couple of lighted rooms. I mean, that's it.
I mean, Nicole DeBoer would go on to be in Deep Space Nine,
Like the
as
last
Axe.
year or two or something.
Yeah, I think the last 2 years or year. I can't remember. 1 or 2 years. But I mean, that's obvious. That's after this, because I mean, Cube's 97. So yeah, she had probably been on Deep Space Nine at that point, or yeah, no, she'd be on Deep Space Nine at that point. But yeah, very much an unknown cast. An incredible concept and just incredible set design. I mean, like, they make that movie look like $1 million, and that movie is super low budget.
Yeah.
in the behind the scenes, you realize they only ever built one room and half of another room, and that's everything they filmed on. They filmed on 1.5 sets, and they filmed the whole movie, and it was amazing.
It was very good.
Another
Yeah.
slightly more minimalist movie from the 90s, which will not be on any other of my list because I scratched it off. If you want to talk about minimalist use of props, Blair Witch Project.
Well, actually, Kale, if you can just hold your horses there.
No.
We are at the point where we are going to unveil the undisputed top 3 from each of us, our top horror movie. Boy. All mine are horror movies, but theirs probably aren't. Top movie of the 1990s. So before we do that, let's just go around the horn real quick and everybody talk about your honorable mentions, other movies that didn't make the list, but they deserve a mention. And we'll bust through these kind of quick because some losers have to go to sleep.
Kale, go ahead.
We're looking at you, Brandon.
Kale, go
Oh, is it
ahead.
my turn? Fine. Okay, I have 4 honorable mentions. Number 1, 1995 movie. Got Warren Beatty in it. It's called Kids. That was a reference to Empire Records.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Same guy. Just a really kind of emotionally intense movie about adolescence in the 90s. I don't want to give too much of the plot away because it's probably a very little known movie. Just really interesting. A lot of faces you'll probably recognize. Also, 1995, Hackers.
Hackers is pretty good.
That is a cult classic, I think. Maybe
Angelina Jolie
gave us one of the best versions of Sherlock Holmes, I think, because I really like the show Elementary.
Johnny Lee
And-
Miller's good in that movie.
And
Johnny Lee Miller's a really good sort of underrated actor. It just pops up all over the place.
he is,
But he's never big. He's just always kind of like, oh, wait a minute. That's Johnny Lee Miller. That's cool. That's cool that he's here.
well, he's like a chameleon. He's morphs into different parts. You know.
He was in Dexter for one season.
Really.
Mm-hmm.
Another one, 1999's Idle Hands,
That's a good one.
Yeah.
about a killer hand possessed by the devil.
Yeah.
Steps.
I think it's
Lemon's
important.
face.
I think it's important that Seth Green was mentioned at least once on this list because, like, Seth Green in the '90s, Jesus Christ.
Well, he was
Is
in
there
Can't
any-
Hardly Wait.
Yeah, but Can't Hardly Wait wasn't actually on the list. Anybody's list.
Yeah, but it was mentioned. It still counts. Another my last honorable mention, 1993, Johnny Depp. What is eating Gilbert Grape?
That's a good movie. That's a good
Check
movie.
this out once.
Leonardo DiCaprio.
Little baby Leo, right before he was in Critters 3.
Just a whole ensemble of characters in there, and just a really intense movie about just it's dystopian, really, but it's not a dystopian. It's just a dystopian family.
It's
just
not a
really-
dystopian future. It's a dystopian present.
Yes, it's just a really screwed up family trying to make it through modern day life, and there's a lot of drama involved, a lot of emotional investment. I think, like after. I don't want to. No, I'm going to say that for something else, but yeah, it's just a really good movie that I think if people haven't seen it, they should at least once.
And actually, the female lead is Juliette Lewis, who's another person who's I think pretty important in the 1990s. All right, Brandon, what are your honorable mentions for?
I have as many as the actual. I'll just run through the list real quick. Thursday, Mean Guns, Equilibrium, In the Company of Men, Four Rooms, Friday, Ronin, True Romance, Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels, and Desperado. If you were to put
2
all
weeks
them
in the valley.
into a weekend,
2 days.
you would thoroughly enjoy yourself. Thursday is quirky. Mean Guns it's best that they don't even explain. Really, they just kind of make the movie.
Mean Guns.
Okay. I just want to mention we can talk about Mean Guns here in 1 second.
Okay. Equilibrium is amazing. We already talked about that one a little bit. In the Company of Men has Aaron Eckhart screaming at a deaf woman. Four
First,
Rooms
it has
has
Aaron
four
Eckhart not
different-
screaming at a deaf woman.
Right. Four Rooms has 4 different directors. The last 2 are Robert Rodriguez and Quentin Tarantino, 2 very good ones. Friday is amazing. Ronin is honestly one of my favorite De Niro movies of all times.
Great chase scenes.
True Romance is fantastic. Oh yeah, and Ronin also has Sean Bean in it. True Romance, another Gary Oldman chameleon movie. Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels will introduce you to Guy Ritchie, so you'll have to watch Snatch after that. And Desperado is so good. It gets
Forgot about Lockstock.
right in between El Mariachi and the vampire one.
Buffy?
No, the Robert Rodriguez vampire one.
Oh, Dust Till Dawn.
Yeah, from Dust Till Dawn.
Never heard
I
of
just
it.
watched the first episode of the series, by the way, where they redo the first episode. They redo the series or they redo the movie, but with different actors, and it's not great. But anyway, okay. So my honorable mentions for my first one, I'm going to make Kale mad that he forgot this movie, and that is Glory Days with Ben Affleck and Alyssa Milano and Sam Rockwell and
Wow.
yeah,
Yeah, I completely
I knew you were.
probably sitting on my shelf right now.
I was going to say Glory Days is just a great coming of age college movie. It's not like particularly, amazing, but it's a lot of fun. And if you're a 90s, a kid who grew up in the 90s, like it's a
And
lot
the
of fun.
part where the dart stops the clock.
Yeah, it's very
It's
symbolism.
a metaphor.
It's a metaphor. It's a fucking metaphor, you fucking idiot.
Don't call her a chick.
Maybe on the 5 and maybe on the 3, but not on the 4. Yeah. Mean Guns, you mentioned it. I wanted to mention it again. Mean Guns is a great little crazy action movie that has no right to be as good as it is.
It's like
tons
what
of fun.
Ice-T and Christopher Lambert. I mean,
Ice-T, Christopher Lambert. It's got the guy that played Chosen in Karate Kid Part 2, as well as the guy that played Tommy Jarvis from Friday the 13th Part 6.
it's
And they're
so
like
good.
a team. They're
And they
just
don't
these,
explain it. It's just
there's probably
Spoilers, bro.
there's probably vampires.
yeah.
It's probably vampires, maybe, but they don't really mention that. It's like it's the only movie where it's like, but they do. Like if you watch that movie, there's a couple of times you're like, wait a minute, is this vampires?
Yeah.
I think it's vampires, but you don't know, and it's a fantastic movie. Just a great movie. Unforgiven is great. I mean, it's like.
Yeah.
It's Unforgiven is the coda of Clint Eastwood's career. It is the penultimate, it is the best distillation of what Clint Eastwood represents. It has an amazing cast with Richard Harris and Gene Hackman and Morgan Freeman and a million other people. It's just
Again, another great one that I fucking let slip by.
I mean, The Unforgiven. That one is right up to the list. And the last one. Kale, you mentioned, but it really should, because this movie got a lot of backlash. The Blair Witch Project is a really, really interestingly made film. I think that ultimately, if you look at the horror genre, that Paranormal Activity kind of did what they did and did it better. But the Blair Witch Project is a good movie. It was
Arguably the first of the found footage.
Right. Made for almost no money. I mean, my car is worth more than what they made that movie for. And it deserves to be.
But I think more of a budget than El Mariachi had, which is $7,000.
I think Blair Witch was like 14 or something like 10 or 20,000. So it's like more, but not fucking much more. Yeah. So those are important movies, but they didn't make the list, so fuck them.
Oh, and one other that didn't. Tales from the Crypt Demon Night.
Yeah, Tales from the Crypt Demon Night, probably one of the best soundtracks of the 1990s.
Pretty close. I would say The
Um,
Crow is still better, but it's pretty close.
If I was listening to him, I would listen to Tales from the Crypt Demon
I
Knight
forgot
before I
about
listened to The
Demon.
Crow. I mean, it's a metal soundtrack. It's just such a metal soundtrack.
The more
Um,
things that you remind me that I forgot. That
I mean, it's like it's Machine Head, Grave Diggers, uh,
Pantera.
it's a suicide.
Pantera. Why am I missing all? Megadeth is on there. It's just it's a great soundtrack. A Mind is a Terrible Thing to Taste.
You fucking hold down,
That's
ho dunk, well, them there motherfuckers.
What band is that? A Mind is a Terrible Thing to
Ministry.
Taste. Huh?
Ministry. Connect the
Ministry.
goddamn dots.
Ministry. Right. Yeah, Ministry. Yeah,
Which is also
fucking
on
great
the Crow soundtrack. Ministry is also on the Crow.
Golgotha Tenement Blues
That,
by the Machines of Loving Grace,
yes.
which is a great band to song, like cool titles.
Yes, yes.
All right, Kale. I'm not going to do a drum roll because that's stupid, but just imagine in your head that there is a drum roll happening without actually vocalizing it, and tell
Okay,
us what is your
hang on.
number one.
Let me imagine a drum roll.
See, this is why we don't talk to him. What is your number one movie of the 1990s?
The Crow.
That's fair. That's fair.
Nice.
You knew it was going to be The Crow.
Actually, I
You've
didn't.
known me for how many years?
You picked some that I didn't know you thought that much of. So I didn't know what your number one was going to be, but I'm not surprised now that I know.
I believe we should have an introspective moment of silence for our dear departed Tintin.
It's a big fucking bird.
Oh, did you mean drink?
Now, The Crow's great. The Crow's, I mean, it's again, it was, I mean, to repeat
Great
the same thing.
soundtrack.
Yeah.
Gritty, dark. It's what people wished Batman was. It's a love story. It's a revenge story. It's essentially a superhero story. Because well,
Kale, you brought up something kind of interesting, and I have a question. Is The Crow, are there any Batman movies that are better than The Crow?
I don't think so.
I mean, The Dark Knight is the only
I
one where
think-
you can
I
make an
think
argument.
The,
I think.
the Christian Dickhead Bale movies are probably as close to as gritty as The Crow is.
But I think
as
The Crow's
far
more
as
fun to
there
watch
is
than
all the
those.
darkness in the world, or what. And I think that's part of the thing is like they put this whole ambiance on of it's always raining and dark stuff, and it's like I get that they're trying to set a mood, but you can
But
do
Kale.
that better through the
But Kale.
characters themselves.
It can't rain all the time. For our audio audience, Kale is now looking at me with inexplicable rage.
Maybe we should just record the play back in slow motion.
No, The Crow's great. It's a great film. And again, I think the thing I like the most about The Crow is just the simplicity of it. I mean, they do one thing, and they do that one thing really, really well, and that's all they have to do.
And since you brought that line up again, I do one thing and I do it really well. I just want to point out that this is not a movie thing, but if you ever see Anthony Bourdain's No Reservations, the special where he goes to Spain, it's a great show, and he uses that line.
Which one?
And No Reservations where he goes to Spain.
Yeah, which line?
I will do one thing. I will do it better than anyone else on the planet.
That might have been actually, that might have been where I heard that. That's very possible. I loved Anthony Bourdain's No Reservations. That show was great. All right, Brandon, what is your number one movie of the 1990s to be immortalized forever in podcasting history? So no pressure at all.
Okay, well, full disclosure, when we started this, I had a different number one. Unfortunately, midway through, I looked it up and it turned out it was made in 2000. So I had to change it. So all the hype I paid it at the beginning was for High Fidelity. Honestly, maybe my all-time favorite movie ever, but it's 2000. So I had to change it, and it's not a bad number one.
So
From
you
19
basically you fucked it up, is what you're saying.
Yes.
Fair
From
enough.
It's all a
1993,
lie.
Demolition Man.
What?
Brandon, we were talking about the best 90s movie, not the most 90s movie.
No,
Well,
let's hear this out. Let's
But
give
it's
him a
so
chance.
good. So many memorable lines and people. You've got Sylvester Stallone. What's the bad guy?
Wesley
Snipes.
Snipes.
Snipes. Yeah.
You
Sandra
just
Bullock.
Wesley Snipes.
That movie also has Cale's favorite actor in the whole world that he loves.
No, it's
forever.
not.
It's got
What?
Jesse
Rob Schneider.
Ventura's in it for a little bit.
He's in Demolition Man?
Yeah,
I-
Rob Schneider's one of the cops.
Yeah,
Rob
he's
Schneider's one of the cops.
He's the one that
Oh,
laughs
yeah,
at him
'cause
for
he was
using
in Judge
grease
Dredd, too.
seals.
And of course, Sandra
Sandra Bullock.
yeah.
And the guy
I would
who ends up
totally
becoming
read that.
Benjamin Bratt is in it.
With our glow sticks. Now, let me be clear. I love Demolition Man.
Yeah.
I think Demolition Man is.
It is not a great movie, but it is a lot of fun.
It is a hoot.
It is.
It is a. I just watched the Double Toasted. Did a review of that movie, and like, Wesley Snipes is basically a cartoon character in that movie.
Right, he is.
I mean, he's nothing even approaching a human being.
Well, and then you've got like the cool stuff that I do kind of wish they would do. Like, I don't want everything to be a Taco Bell, but I would love to have the crash foam in cars by now. You know, it just
You'd think.
something that would be really cool.
No, it's a great.
Suddenly I was a cannoli.
Yeah.
It's a terrible great film.
Yeah. And it
Um,
would have been High Fidelity, which is an amazing movie, a great
just
book,
wish
and
his
even a
muscles
really
had
good
more
TV
oil on
show.
Spoilers for when we do our 2000s.
Yes,
Uh,
it is my number one. Yeah.
which we'll put that off for a couple weeks. um,
Whatever.
mine. I think that my number one will come as a surprise to not many people in this chat, because the movie is perfect. That's not to say it's the best movie of all time, but it is a movie that is it is impossible to improve on it. It was as good as it could possibly be, and it's The Big Lebowski. The Coen brothers literally wrote the characters in the movie for the actors that were playing those characters, and it shows.
That's what it should be.
Well, I mean, it's something that most movies you can't do. I mean, you can't write you can't write a character for a specific actor. I mean, you can, maybe you can write one, but you can't write them all. But in this, they basically did. And I mean, starting off with just the simple stuff like Peter Stormare and Tara Reid, and Brandt. He's such a great actor. Now I can't think of his name. He just passed away in the last few.
Oh, yeah.
Plumber?
No, he was on the pirate radio and a whole bunch of other stuff.
He's been in a million fucking things, but like even like you get to the small characters. I mean, even the chief of police of Malibu. Stay out of Malibu! Stay out of Malibu, you deadbeat!
I wasn't
Okay.
listening.
I'm sorry, I wasn't listening. I hate the fucking Eagles.
What?
Get out of my taxi.
Get the fuck out of my fucking cab! You don't like my fucking music. That movie is amazing. Jackie Treehorn. I mean, Jackie Treehorn's in it for one scene, and he's like perfect.
Talk about a role, though. The 90s also had the Coen brothers make Miller's Crossing, which is arguably another near perfect movie from the Coen brothers.
I didn't even think that was I thought that was in the late 80s. But
No,
you're probably
I
right.
looked it
It
up.
probably is in the 90s.
Yeah.
What is Miller's
Um,
Crossing?
That's Gabriel Bryan and
I know
yeah.
the title, but that's all I know.
It's the guy that played Kilgore Trout, Albert Finney. I think Albert Finney plays the main
the
mafia boss.
the former boss.
John
yeah.
Turturro's in it.
John Turturro. Yeah.
Because John Turturro's in everything that the Coen brothers do.
Yeah. Yeah.
But The Big
So
Lebowski,
good.
I mean, the thing you were mentioning about it being quotable, I mean, the movie is just, I mean, it's like it was written to be quotable. It's just
The Big
incredible.
Lebowski.
Yeah, I
Okay.
mean it's amazing. It is a perfect film. There's nothing you could do that would improve that film. It is exactly what it should be. It is exactly what it needed to be, and it is
I
flawless.
know this wasn't part of the plan, but does anybody else have any other honorable mentions they want to throw in here real quick?
Some men are uncomfortable with the word vagina.
Johnson,
I'm very comfortable with that word.
Coitus.
Coitus.
Carl Hungus. I mean, it's like I feel like an idiot, like just quoting the lines from the movie, but they're.
Shut the
It's so
fuck
good.
up, Donnie.
Do you have any like, leads or anything?
Leads.
We talked to the boys down at the crime lab.
They got us working in shifts.
Over a stolen fucking piece of shit car.
And all we wanted was his rug back.
All right. Well, so we've clearly put forth a non-negotiable list of the best movies of the 1990s. We will talk to you again very soon, and watch 90s movies because they're great. Even if you weren't born in the 90s or born before the 90s or born after the 90s, watch 90s movies. They're great. All right, everybody, be good and have fun.